Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I recently received an email. Someone wanted to know how to come to Japan. The tone of the email indicated that this person was having a lot of difficulties with trying to come here. And the tone also reminded me of when I first moved to Korea and the difficulties I had in coming to Asia. Today, I wanted to talk about how to come to Asia as a teacher or as a student. But before I begin, I want to start with a story. I will tell you the moral of the story first. For every 10 people you meet who will tell you that you cannot do something, you will meet one who will tell you, yes, you can. And here is how. This story goes back to when I was a cadet in ROTC. I was getting close to commissioning and I had some problems. At this point, this was years ago. I don't remember what these problems were. At the time, they did not seem as trivial as they turned out to be. I talked to one of the upperclassmen. He and I had similar backgrounds and we expected to have similar careers. When I explained to him my problem, he told me a story. The story went something like this. Every cadet in Army ROTC has to go through something called Leadership Development Assessment course. This course demands that you take a protractor, a map, and a compass. And during the daytime and the nighttime, you have to use land navigation skills to complete a course. So you have to walk through the woods using a map, a compass, and a protractor. In his case, he was colorblind. He failed night land navigation. You have to be able to see in more colors than he could to be able to use those tools. So after failing this process, you get a second chance. A second chance matters. He talked to an officer who was curious what difficulty he was having with passing the course. And he explained to the officer that he's colorblind and can't use the tools. The officer was surprised. You cannot be colorblind and become an Army officer. So this upperclassman who I was talking to explained, well, be that as it may, I am colorblind, I'm here, and I cannot complete this course. Fortunately, the officer who this cadet associate of mine was talking to was an artillery officer. They have a different way of using these tools, using something called mills, which are not invisible to this cadet. So in very quick succession, this Army officer taught this colorblind cadet how to use these tools. Usually this should take days, maybe weeks to master. This cadet had one evening to do this. Using his new skills, this colorblind cadet, who cannot be an Army officer, was able to complete nightland navigation, gain his commission, become an Army officer, and today he still has a very productive career. He's a field grade officer. Now, he can't do that. He can't be a colorblind field grade officer. He cannot be a colorblind officer at all. He is a colorblind Army officer. When I talked to him about this story, he gave me that same moral I told you when we started out. For every 10 people you talk to who will tell you that you cannot do something, you will meet one who will tell you that, yes, you can. And here is how. Consider the implications of that lesson. Today, I want to talk to you about coming to Asia as a student, as a teacher, perhaps other ways to come to Asia. To begin with, I'm going to talk to you about how some people come with the military, how some people come as English teachers, how some people come as students, and then a small list of other ways that people come to Asia. So let's begin with the military. If you are an American citizen, joining the military gives you a lot of opportunities to come to Japan, Korea, even other places in Asia. I have a father who was able to visit the Philippines, Singapore, and Japan, an aunt who was able to visit Japan, an uncle who was able to visit Korea, a cousin who's married to a Japanese woman. I would recommend, if you are interested in this route, that you not only find a recruiter, but ask someone you know who's also in the military to join you when you talk to the recruiter, someone who knows your interests and understands what the military might try to negotiate with you to make sure you both get the best deal. I'd recommend, if you can, that you consider what type of career is best for you. Consider things like whether or not it's more advantageous for you to become enlisted service member or an officer. Enlisted service members tend to be more technically oriented. Officers tend to be more managerially oriented. There is some overlap between both fields, both career paths. I would say that this is something that a lot of people consider unrealistic for them, but consider the moral of the previous story. It may not be unrealistic for you if it's of interest to you. Let me also say that I've met people in the military who are not American citizens, or at least were not born in the United States. And joining the military was a route that helped them gain their citizenship. This has happened more than once. I've benefited from having friends in the military, in the US military, who were not born in the United States and were not born with American citizenship. So this is an option for more people than just people who are born in the 50 states of the United States of America. I want to move on to another chapter where I have more experience as far as coming to Asia. That is with teaching English. Teaching English, if you're from a native English speaking country such as Canada, the United States, the United Kingdom, South Africa, Australia, or New Zealand, and in some cases, other countries as well, teaching English in Korea, China, Japan, and Taiwan are very popular routes to go see those countries. What I'd recommend, and you will find links at the bottom of this page, what I'd recommend is that you try two websites, gaijinpod.com and eslcafe.com. Typically, it's required that you have a bachelor's degree in any field to work in Korea and to work in Japan. The requirements can be different in different countries. It's rarely required in the most popular countries that you have a master's degree or a teaching certificate. That's not always true. And in some cases, you can definitely benefit as far as your opportunities if you do have a master's degree and a teaching certificate. As I record this, I do not have a master's degree, nor do I have a teaching certificate. When I say teaching certificate, I do not mean only a certificate for teaching at a school, but I mean what's called a TEFL, a TESOL, a CELTA, or a DELTA, which are common certificates you get for teaching English. Despite that, I was able to enjoy a very comfortable set of jobs in Korea as an English teacher. I'm not saying this is not a worthwhile pursuit if you want to get one of those certificates, but it's not essential. In my experience, at least in teaching in Korea, the job I took was essentially very consistent. I have to comment though, there are different types of job teaching positions in Asia and in Korea. I worked for a very popular, large, what's called Hagwon. Hagwon is an after school study program. Because it was one of the larger ones, it tended to be very consistent with its policies. I had no problems with this company. Some people have expressed other experiences. The job was very intense from about 4 p.m. till 10 p.m. Typically required to come in a little bit earlier than that. In my case, I typically came in about 2 hours earlier than that to get my classes ready. You're working the entire time once you first get your students, but it's as you learn how to do it, almost fun. So if you have a job that you enjoy, is it really a job? Well, that was my experience with teaching. I worked for 1 year at one of the more popular Hagwons, the after school programs. And then I got a job as an English teacher for the Korean military. This was the best job I've ever had. It was incredibly satisfying. It was a lot of fun. The compensation was exceptional, and it allowed me enough vacation time to travel all over Asia. Once again, I do not have a master's degree, nor do I have a teaching certificate, but I was able to make a very significant contribution to my employer at that time. My point is this: you do have options, even if you don't think you do. You'll meet coworkers in some cases who almost come off as being unemployable at their homes. In some places, you'll meet coworkers who are almost heroic, and it seems like you're working with very unique and talented individuals. Consider this, that if you're from a town in the United States or a small city in the United Kingdom, you may not be used to dealing with a lot of people from different cultures. This is one of those unique opportunities where you get to go to a different country and spend time with a lot of different people from different countries. It becomes something you almost become addicted to. In some cases, you make friends very easily. In some places, you won't get along with the people you work with, but they are worth meeting. Aside from the work itself, the lifestyle was always interesting. Depending on what city you live in, you'll have a lot of opportunities to try new food, to travel to new countries, to experience new ways of having fun. When I first arrived in Korea, I went through a recruiter for one of the larger companies. I went through training. I had some difficulty with training and had to restart it, which pushed back my start date for school, or sorry, not school, for teaching. This was a very stressful time because I was in somewhat of limbo. When you come to another country, you're required to get a visa if you're working there legally. There are different types of visas. If you are in the country and you're not working, that visa becomes something that you're very, very much concerned about, because if you don't have a visa, you really cannot stay in the country. But the time it took me to complete training was one of the most, it was an incredibly stressful time, but it was one of the most eye-opening experiences of my life. I am grateful for that period of time. The two cities I think I should talk about the most were Busan. Incredible weather, very fun people, a lot of things to do in the summertime. And around Seoul, I lived in Songnam. I was living in a luxury apartment outside of Seoul. You could see downtown Seoul from my window. Regular trips to Seoul were common, and I was able to enjoy a lot of exciting opportunities with things like the nightlife, with volunteer activities with North Korean defectors, with taking lessons I'd never considered taking. I was able to take Korean classes, Korean language classes. These are things that were not likely to be available to me where I was growing up in the United States. Let's move on to another subject, being a student. Studying is popular for students from all around the world. As opposed to English teaching, where you're mostly working with people from native English speaking countries, as a student, you're working with people from all kinds of countries, from the African continent, from South America, from Europe, from East Asia, from the Middle East, the entire world might be represented at your university. In my case, my university, I'm the only American in my program. Every day, I spend time with my best friends who are from Thailand, from Congo, from Brazil, and from Japan. All of us have different backgrounds, but similar interests, and we all get along very well. And from time to time, you get to have a night together where you exchange food and try food you never had before and have conversations from perspectives you'd never considered before. If you think this is impossible to do for you, maybe your GPA is not very high, maybe you don't have a lot of money. Consider that you might be offering a unique perspective that the university wants, and your GPA may not matter at all. If you have your bachelor's degree, or if you are going to in a position to complete school, a lot of schools will hear you out for your interview. When it comes to financing, understand this. A comparable program to the one I'm studying right now, were I studying in the United States, would cost 10 times what this one costs. 10 times the price if I were to study in the United States. I'm not talking about studying at a prestigious university, just a nearby university that has a similar program. In this case, I'll mention that the University of Michigan has a very famous program for what I'm interested in studying. I'd have to pay 10 times what I'm paying here. That's quite a bit of money. Studying here, I'm able to have incredible experiences with people who I enjoy seeing every day, and I'm doing it at a fraction of the cost. And speaking of cost, there are scholarships available throughout the country that can help you offset those costs. I have a friend who received something called the MEXT scholarship. Go to your nearest consulate for Japan and talk to them about MEXT, and they will immediately walk you through what you have to do and what the deadlines are. The deadlines are what you have to worry about. There are other scholarships besides MEXT, and in the case of my university, if you apply early, typically they'll waive the tuition cost altogether, and you might be eligible for a stipend. That makes a big difference. That's the difference between studying in some cases and not studying. My experience was several years ago, I went on a college tour. I had spent a little bit of time studying at language schools in Korea, and I was interested in seeing what else is out there. I took a ferry from Busan to Fukuoka. At Fukuoka, I visited Kyushu University. I had trouble communicating with the people there, so I continued on my way and went to Nagasaki, which is south of Fukuoka. Everyone was incredibly supportive at Nagasaki, and that's why I ended up applying to this university where I am now. And on the way out of Japan, I took a train to Osaka and visited Osaka University. Once again, I had trouble coordinating with the people at the university. Osaka is a nice place. The university is not exactly in Osaka. It was a little bit of a college tour, and I learned a lot from the college tour. And the big interest I had was being in an environment that was supportive. I feel like I'm finding success I am finding today because I'm in a supportive environment. In that case, it's Nagasaki. If you contact me, I will give you access to a list of popular English programs taught in Japan. So what I mean is my program is not taught in Japanese. There are opportunities to study Japanese through my university, but everything is taught in English. A lot of universities have a similar setup where you can take the courses entirely in English. I'll just mention one. It seems like the University of Nagoya offers many programs in English. And you'll find throughout the country there are other universities that also offer programs in English. So if you're not sure that your Japanese is strong enough, don't let that be a limiting factor. Study what you can and get good in the meantime. As far as day to day, the schedule changes very frequently, but the workload is not undoable. You do need some help from time to time from the administration office with completing tasks like going to the bank or using the post office, things like that. But it's never so hard that you can't imagine a way to do it. Let me move on to one of the final topics, which is other ways that you'll find people who are living overseas, specifically in East Asia. One day, I was taking a train from Seoul to Busan, and I met a young man wearing black pants and a white shirt, a blonde guy, so you could tell he's probably not from Korea. And if you're listening to my description, you might be able to guess this was a Mormon. He was a missionary. And while we were sitting on the train together, he gave me some suggestions on how I can study Korean. This still impacts how I study languages today. Missionary work is a popular way, if you belong to a church that's willing to sponsor you, to come to another country. In addition to missionaries, you'll often find engineers or specialists. You'll find people who are on a working holiday. A friend of mine's younger brother visited Korea on a working holiday. So that is, you get a visa that allows you to stay for, I think, around 6 months and allows you to work not quite full time to cover the expenses of being in the country. That's a working holiday. A lot of countries have this scheme. It's a worthwhile experience if you don't have a degree yet, if you don't have the ability to come under like a teaching visa, or if you're from a country that doesn't fall into eligibility for the teaching visa. Travels and tourists are a different experience now because of COVID. So I recommend before you come that you get on the embassy page for your country to check about the visa and COVID entry requirements. Once or twice, I was able to meet refugees, I believe from, in fact, let me walk that back. I don't want to guess. And I don't want to bring that up because I think that might be a political issue. But you do meet people who are in different countries for different reasons. One last thing I'll mention, digital nomads. From time to time, you'll stay at a hostel and you'll meet people from all over the world. In some cases, they're working online while they're traveling overseas. The issue with a visa is less of an issue, except that there's still the limitation on how long you can be in the country. But you will still have access to banking and earning an income if you're working as a digital nomad. That is to say, you have a job that allows you to work online instead of in person. And as long as you have a laptop and internet connection, you can still earn money despite not having a residence in that country. This is a popular way of doing business. Before COVID was the issue that it was not difficult to go from, for example, Korea to China to Japan to Korea in a circuit. And in that time, you're spending around 90 days in each place. And this is how you're able to stay in the area, stay in the region without spending too much money, because once you get across the Pacific Ocean, you will find that airline tickets become much cheaper. This is not a bad option for people who are so inclined. That's all I have for you for today. Please contact me if you have any questions that I can help you out with. My information is at the bottom of the page, and you can leave a comment. Please like and subscribe. I want you to take this information I gave you seriously, and please do ask me questions if you think I might be able to help. I want you to be able to be successful and then go on to be that 1 in 10 people who will tell another person, yes, you can, and here's how.